In this lesson, we'll discuss relative layouts. Relative layouts allow us to arrange our controls relative to each other, so we can place a control to the right, left, above, or below another control. We can also align controls within the parent. This gives us a lot of flexibility in our layouts. We'll start with an empty vertical linear layout and add a relative layout within it. So there's our relative layout, and now we're just going to add a text view and an edit text right next to it and see how those lay out. So there's our text view. And here's our edit text. And a feature of this designer is the second control doesn't seem to actually go into the relative layout. So we have to go into the XML and move it in. So now it's in there, but you can see that the text view and the edit text are both left aligned, so they're basically on top of each other. So that's not really what we wanted. So we'll try and fix that by setting an attribute on the edit text. And what we're going to do is we're going to tell the edit text to lay itself out right of the text view. So we'll use the layout to the right of attribute and put in the ID for the text view. So it lays out to the right of the text view, and it does fill the entire rest of the parent screen because its width property is fill parent. So that was good. Let's try something else using two buttons that I want to be both on the same vertical plane, but I want one to be aligned left and I want the other to be aligned right. So I've got my relative layout, and I'll add my first button, and then I'll add another button, and again I'll have to move him into the layout. And when I can go back to the designer, you can see again they're both on top of each other. And this time I will set the alignment of the second button to be aligned to the parent's right hand side. I'll set that to be true, and then I have to change the layout width of that button to just wrap the content. And now you can see I have the two buttons left and right aligned. So now let's try something just a little bit more complicated. I'm going to take an image and I'm basically going to wrap some controls around the side of it. So I'll take my image view and I'll set its image source property, and we'll end up talking about the image view later on in the course. And we'll say OK to that. So now we have a little ghost picture in there, and we're going to wrap our controls around it. And I'm going to start with a single text view. And a plain text. And then a button. And we'll start with the text view, and we'll move him into the layout after the image view. In this case, I'll work with the XML directly. And what I want is I want that text view to be to the right of the image. So I'll set its layout to right of property. And this is what the XML looks like. It's layout to the right of, and the ID for the image view. And when I go back to design, you can see that that layout took effect. So now let's work with the edit text control. And I also want it to be laid out to the right of the image view, but I also want it to be below the text view. So I use the layout below property and set it equal to the ID of the text view. So there he is to the right of the image and below the text view. And finally we could get to the button. And the button again, I want to lay out to the right of the image view, and this time I want it to be below the edit text. And when I go into design, you can see I've got that laid out. Now the picture is not quite right in this space, so I want that to be laid out center vertically. That's the layout center vertical property. And you can see that the text now is vertically centered with the controls wrapping around it. So you can see we can do some fairly creative things with relative layouts.